Hello there, and welcome to Heads Up Bears. Today on my show, we have a little bit of a different story going. We've got a surprise. Today, we brought in the wonderful and amazing First Lady of our beautiful Baylor University. Well, here we come, Miss Alice Starr.
Hi there,
Welcome,
Rachel.
and thank you so much for joining me. I know everybody's excited to see
It's
you.
a pleasure.
So, I figured today we'd just kind of talk about you and how you enjoy being First Lady, I suppose, and all the things that you get to do.
Well, I absolutely love the role of First Lady. I have always had my own career, but I've also always followed my husband's career, which has been quite dynamic. So I've had to be very flexible, and wherever we move, I formed my own firm. And when we lived out in California, so I could do that, I helped nonprofits with marketing, advertising, and public relations, and fundraising. So wherever we are, I get involved in the nonprofit world, which I love, and I'm very involved here in Waco. And it's been a great pleasure. And plus, I'm so involved at Baylor, because that's the fun part. I love going to all the sporting events, the concerts. I speak to several student groups each year, and a lot of the alumni network groups, and it's great fun.
So how did you get started in the nonprofit area?
Well, I actually served with the largest for-profit firm in Northern Virginia that was a real commercial real estate developer. And during a downturn in the real estate market, I decided the best thing I could do to help my firm with their public relations was get involved in the local community. I ended up serving on 25 different nonprofit boards and chaired about 6 or 7 of them, including the Chamber of Commerce there in Northern Virginia. So I got a lot of experience working with nonprofits, and I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. So what inspired you to, or what do you do when you start with a new nonprofit and you're trying to get them going where they're supposed to be? How do you come up with the ideas?
Well, I try to learn about who their board members are and their history and what their vision is for the future. That vision is very important. And I help them to come up with strategic events that will become their own, that identifies them in the community. So whatever the event is, it should have something to do with what their mantra is, and should be unique, and it should be a major fundraiser so that they not only get some good public relations, but hopefully sponsors, and can use that event to grow their services. So I've been able to do that for quite a few firms.
So is that also what you do with Starr Strategy?
Yeah, I do. Well, with Starr Strategy, sometimes I just give consulting advice to firms who are struggling to stay alive, because most nonprofits do struggle.
True.
The hard part is that you have to raise money every year if you're a nonprofit. That's why I tend to work with large events, because then you can develop that each and every year and build on it each year, as opposed to just doing a one-time event, which helps you that year, but it won't help you the following year. So it's nice to build an endowment if you can.
Cool. So when you thought about starting Starr Strategies, what did you go about doing?
Well, we lived in California at the time, and I just went to online to see how do you start your own firm, and that wasn't hard. I just had to file some forms, and then I let people know. I had business cards made, I had a logo made, I did everything that you would do when starting a firm, and then put out the word, and it wasn't long before people were contacting me.
Cool. So have you always been ambitious?
I have always learned to be a go-getter, in that I do know that unless you go out and do it yourself, it's not going to get done. I've never depended on others. I've always tried to make sure that I help, and I'm part of a team, but never rely on others to get the job done that you can do.
Awesome. So is one of your life mantras, if you can't do it, why put it off? Don't put off for tomorrow what you can do today.
Right. Oh, I mean, I try to. Obviously, sometimes I get so busy I have to put things off till tomorrow. But yeah, I think it's very important to always think before you act, and really strategize. Not just myself, but with others. I really believe in teamwork and brainstorming with others. And but if you work together, you can come up with some magnificent ideas.
So when you bring in your team for a new project, what's the first thing you guys do in your group meeting?
Well, we strategize on where we've been, what has been successful, what hasn't been successful, and then try to come up with what contacts do they have, and where are they trying to go, and what is the message they're trying to give. And if we can do that and then come up with either an advertising plan or a marketing plan or an event that will help do that, that's wonderful. I'll give you an example. When we first, even before we came to Baylor, it was a few months before, we went to a nursing school luncheon celebrating the 100th year of our nursing school. And we had been in Dallas that day before the event with some people we knew who were not from Baylor. And we told them about this nursing event. They said, well, we didn't know they had a nursing school. And then we talked to some other people. Oh, we didn't know they had a nursing school, that Baylor had one in Dallas. So that concerned my husband, and he said, Alice, you're going to have to help them come up with a way to get better known in the Dallas area, but certainly around the state, because it's a very fine nursing school. So working with the nursing school team that was in place, we came up with the idea of having a Going for the Gold Gala. That was 3 years ago. We got Coach Kim Mulkey to be our first speaker, and that was the year she went for the national championship, and we won. And we got Troy Aikman, a former Dallas Cowboy quarterback, to introduce her, and we had an incredibly successful event. And at the same time is raising awareness about the nursing school, because we sent out, I think, about 6,000 invitations, not just to Baylor Bears, but the whole business community as well. We also raised $650,000 for scholarships for students.
For the nursing students?
So it was a win-win situation, all for nursing students.
That's even better.
So now we're having last year we had Emmett Smith as our special guest, and this year we'll have Mary Lou Retton, who was a gold medal winner in the gymnastics in 1984, and her daughter now participates on the Baylor gymnastics team.
Oh, great.
So again, it's all relevant to what the nursing school is trying to do, but we use Baylor Bears whenever we can to help spread our message. Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm.
So can you tell me a little bit about your experience in Washington, D.C.?
Well, we lived in Washington, D.C. about 29 years, and that's where we raised our family. We had 3 children there, and in fact, we now have 6 grandchildren, 4 of whom live in the Washington, D.C. area. And as I mentioned before, I served on as many as 25 different nonprofit boards at different times, not all at the same time. But I became very involved in the community. And so when we left, several of the boards wanted me to stay on, and I'm still on 6 of those boards. And I go back a couple of times a month for board meetings. Okay. I'm on a bank board in Northern Virginia, as well as Mount Vernon, wonderful home of George Washington. And since I've been on their board, started in 2001, we built an education center, an orientation center, and a visitor center, and now a library dedicated to our first president and the founding fathers. So we've had a lot of ambitious goals at Mount Vernon, and each one has been reached with the help of not only the regents, but the business board that I serve on.
Cool. So how did you get involved with the Women's Corporate Directors Group?
Well, Women Corporate Directors was actually founded in New York, and they wanted to start a Washington chapter. So I was in on the start of the Washington chapter. And since I served on a corporate board, that was a prerequisite of joining Women Corporate Directors. And the whole point is that there are very few women who serve on corporate boards these days. So we're trying to encourage more and more public companies to put women on their boards, because they can be very helpful board members. Yeah. And it also adds to the diversity of a board, and to the, I think, if they have stockholders, it adds a lot also in that world, because women are now very prominent in the financial world as well. So it's a good thing, and that's what we do, and we have a lot of meetings that actually promote good corporate practices.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. So do you ever go to speak on behalf of the board? I don't go on behalf of Women Corporate Directors, no, because we moved to California. I started the chapter there, and then when we moved to Waco, I'm a member of the Dallas chapter, but I really don't have time to go to most of their meetings, and I'm so far away I really can't direct it or
I am not even on the board. I just a member. Enjoying the fruits of others' labors.
Hey,
There
it's
you go.
okay.
Yes.
Sometimes it's better to do that.
That's right.
Because you're busy.
Yes.
So another question for you is, when you are talking to business students that are women, how do you inspire them to
Well,
keep working?
that's a good question because because my husband moved around so much with all his different positions, sometimes I'd be on the job for 3 months and I'd find out we were moving, and so I had to be very flexible, but also upbeat and optimistic. So, for instance, when we moved to California, I got a job at University of Southern California, and I was very happy in that job, but I learned 3 months later we'd be moving to Washington because he had a position as a law clerk to Chief Justice Warren Burger. So when we moved to Washington, I was told there were no jobs at the schools I wanted to work for, so I went and I knocked on the door and said, here's my resume, and this is what I can do for you. I'd love to work here, and I was hired every time I did that.
Awesome.
I don't think, especially in this day and age where everybody just sends out the resume on Twitter or by email, it is not a good thing. You do need to go in person, and you have to use your contacts, every contact you have.
Right.
And so for pretty much every job I've gotten since then, I never applied. People would call me. And a lot of that is building a reputation. But I highly recommend to students that if they can't find a job in the city where they want to work or in the area where they want to work, go intern for free. Even if you think you can't do that, rely on friends or parents or brothers and sisters to help you out. But you need the experience, and if you work really hard, you're going to become indispensable, and they won't be able to do without you. And that's what I tried to do in every job. I made sure that I became indispensable, so they had to hire me.
Awesome.
And students can do that. They just have to have an attitude like, there's no job too little that I can't do. And you sometimes have to start on the ground floor, and that's okay. That's all right.
So do you ever give do you ever give recommendations for students?
Oh yes, I've gotten a lot of students jobs, especially in Washington. I've made calls to people we know there, and I said, this is a bright young man or bright young woman, and I hope you'll interview them. I obviously can't get them a job. All I can do is recommend. But we do know a lot of people still in the Washington area. I'm happy to make those recommendations that they be interviewed, and then it's up to them to get the job.
Very true. So how do students go about getting those?
Oh, finding out, well, they have to have an area or a passion of where they want to work. There's a young gentleman working on Capitol Hill, and I talked to him and discovered he was from Oklahoma, and I said, well, apply to your Oklahoma congressman. He was trying to get a job with someone not in his district. And a young woman who wanted to work in public relations, and set her up with about 3 or 4 different interviews, and I think she got a couple of different job offers. So it doesn't always work, but sometimes you just have to keep trying and always use your contacts if you have some.
Great. So do you prefer to know the student before you recommend them?
Yes, definitely. Yes, definitely. And we always try to interview a student before we recommend them.
Awesome.
My husband gives recommendations too.
Wow.
For law school and for judges and for all sorts of jobs. He's happy to do that. If the person's really motivated to want to do the work and knows where they want to work.
Great.
So I'm trying to help a young man now in law school who wants to get a job with a local law firm. All I can do is put in a good word.
So how do students go about getting a recommendation from you?
I usually have to know them. So, I mean, if I happen to know who they are, and I spoke before the public relations, I think it was a committee or society or club a few years ago, and one of the girls came up to me. I didn't know her, but then I interviewed her and got to know her.
Awesome. Would you prefer a student to email you and say, hi,
Yeah.
I'd like to be interviewed by you? Okay,
That'd be
great.
fine. I mean, I can't promise anything other than, and especially since we're so busy, but yeah, absolutely. If I know of a student who's doing great things, I'm happy to recommend them.
Awesome. Great. So my last question for you is, what's next for Miss Alice Starr?
Well, I think I'm one of the few women in the country who don't mind following their husband around. So my husband's here to stay for a few years as far as I know. So we're staying put in Waco. And I am enjoying a lot of what I'm doing here in Waco. This past month, in January, Baylor opened a Center for Developmental Disabilities. And that was at my urging, and I was a real cheerleader for this because I think it's so important to work with families who have children with multiple disabilities. It's very hard. And so 4 different departments at Baylor are working on this. We have the School of Education and Educational Psychology, the School of Neuroscience and Psychiatry, School of Communications Disorders, who do speech therapy for students, and then the School of Social Work, who work with families who are struggling. And so I'm so proud that we've opened it. Now we need to expand it and do some fundraising. And so I'm going to try to be very helpful. And we're going to try to form an advisory board of very dynamic people, not only here in Waco, but around the country, who are interested in helping children with special needs. So that's something that will be taking probably increasingly more of my time, but I've been enjoying working on that, especially with Dean John Engelhardt from the School of Education. He's been very dedicated to this project. And Baylor Scott and White, which owns Hillcrest Hospital now, has been very involved in this as well, and they've given us free space at one of the old, part of the old campus of Hillcrest Hospital. So it's a win-win situation. And I've also involved in Keep Waco Beautiful, and I'm encouraging to use more and more students for some of their beautification projects and cleanups now that we're going to be on the river a lot, and at the new stadium we need to keep it clean of debris and trash, and so we'll have a lot of ways that students can help. Pretty much everything I take on in the community involves students in some way, or faculty, or staff. I'm becoming president of Baylor Roundtable in May, which is women, staff members, and faculty, and then the spouses of administrators and faculty. And we have dynamic programs each month, and we also have service projects. So this is a way I can help lead at Baylor and get more and more women involved, I hope. We'll hope to increase the membership. Yeah, I'm going to stay very busy. Many other boards that I'm on here in Waco, and I enjoy it. I especially like helping the indigent and those who can't help themselves.
Right. Because we're here to help.
That's right. And if I can be of help to my husband, I try to do that too. He considers me the #1 cheerleader at Baylor because I go to so many of the soccer and volleyball and
you were at the basketball
right.
game
I went to
today.
the basketball game today, and I go to the men's games too. If we're in town, I try to go to any of the sporting events. But I also love the culture here, the theater and the music, and go to all the concerts when we can. So.
Wonderful. That is absolutely amazing because some schools don't have the support system like Baylor does.
Mm-hmm.
You are one of the people that we know because we see you everywhere, and it's great.
Well, we enjoy it. We like to be part of any community where we are, and we've just found everybody, both at Baylor and in the Waco community, to be extremely friendly and kind, very cultured. It's been a wonderful joy for us to be here.
Great, and I hope you guys stay for a while.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know it's a busy day for you, and you were so gracious, and I can't be more appreciative of you spending your afternoon with me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it,
Thank you.
Rachel.
So that's all I have for you today, and I hope to see you next time on Heads Up Bears. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay excited, and stay heads up. See you next time.